We're going to start with a debunk with Professor Ben Burgis. He's author of Give Them an Argument, Logic for the Left. He's a proprietor of a very good Patreon page, which you should go and check out. He is a professor of logic at Perimeter College. And he just had another debate with Mr. Destiny, and we're going to talk about it. But Ben, first, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Secondly, are you ready for your song?
Oh, yes.
I want to go to mockery really badly, so please go.
Okay.
You got to restrain me. Debunk all of it. Logical analysis. You're going to show us how to argue that. Go.
This is based on data from a bunch of different countries. There's abundant evidence that at this point that's bullshit. Breaking down these right-wing arguments and looking at how they're supposed to fit together.
Okay, break it down. Break it down. Break it down. Debunk all of it. Wait, am I saying fuck all of them?
Break it down, I think you're saying.
I've heard break it down, but then I'm also hearing something else. But
you're saying hail Satan.
I'm saying hail. If you play that track backwards, I'm saying hail Satan. God is dead. Little 1980s flair on TMBS. Ben Burgis, what were you talking about with Destiny?
Yeah.
And we have a clip, of course.
Of course. So we started off talking about rent control, and he made the usual argument against rent control that it doesn't that it's bad for investment in new housing. Less new housing is going to be built by the private sector, and I made the point that we always make in these discussions, which is that what Bernie Sanders is proposing, what we want, is universal rent control, coupled with a massive new investment in public housing, which one would think that would be kind of a 30-second discussion, right? Like if you say your objection to rent controls, there's not enough new private units being built. He'd say, yeah, but we want to build a bunch of private and public units. You'd think there'd be kind of, oh, okay, well, never mind then. All right, now I get it.
All right, makes sense. Have a good day.
Yeah, exactly. But he dug at his heels, and it ended up turning into a much bigger discussion about a lot of other things, in particular universality and whether programs, whether we're talking about rent control or single-payer healthcare or other things, are more politically durable if they're universal, which he denied. And in the course of that, he was really challenging me. How can you possibly know that that's right? Because these are such complicated phenomenon that like. How can you prove that? And I don't know if you need to do anything with the soundboard here, but I said something about inference to the best explanation. And
inference of the best explanation, I will do this one. Money.
So inference to the best explanation is a concept from the philosophy of science that basically says if the data is consistent with multiple explanations, that doesn't mean you just have to throw up your hands and you can't know what's what. You can say, no, this one is the simplest, most obvious, most likely explanation. So let's go with that. And that kind of set him off for what we're going to hear in the first clip.
All right, let's play these clips.
You understand right now that your inference to the best explanation, you're using this in an atrocious way, right? Do you understand that?
No, I actually don't, but please try to explain it to me.
Sure. So inference to the best explanation isn't going to be used to provide a causal link between two highly complicated events. So for instance, if I were to say...
Actually, that's pretty much exclusively what it's used for, but keep going.
Oh! With the BDE, Ben Burgis. All right, let's play the second clip. Do you need to set up the second clip?
No, that slides right into the second clip.
All right, let's play the second clip.
Secondly, I don't think that we've established why your inference that in order for you to establish this with some kind of data point, you would have to show me here's a program that had 52% support, but after it was implemented, now it has 85% support. That this program was barely popular, but once it's implemented and it's universal, now it's wildly popular. Because what I'm more curious is if you have a program that had 80% support and then was implemented and continues to have 80% support. Because in that case, then a program being universal doesn't mean that it's harder to take away. The fact that it's universal just because it was already popular, so it was never going to be taken away. It had nothing to do about the universality of it. It just had to do with the fact that it was already immensely popular.
All
Because
right,
I don't think your inference is any better than mine. I think both stories are. I would argue that mine has more explanatory power than yours because of how policy works. I mean,
What?
well, hold on. I mean, they have in my case, we're not relying on anything true. What we're relying on and extrapolating from is the fact that these programs, yes, obviously, programs that only kick in at a certain age are not universal among age groups. They're universal in the sense that they're universal among people, but they have but all I'm relying on is people knowing and seeing that they will benefit from it being universal, and this being something that it makes sense to think would be a political advantage. What you're relying on is this totally hypothetical claim that these things were wildly popular when they were implemented. So as a matter of fact, right, we're both Americans, but we have a Canadian presence. Lance, when the NDP, or what became the NDP, first started talking about instituting universal health insurance, how did the Conservatives feel about it?
They weren't stoked.
Kind of what I figured. Now, do Canadian Conservatives currently say let's abolish?
No, it's a non-starter.
Because it's so popular.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be political suicide to do otherwise.
okay, so
You got to have a Marshall McLuhan moment there, bro.
Yeah, no, that was fun. It was being moderated by Lance for the Serfs, who is, of course, a Canadian, so I couldn't resist bringing him in there too. Because what Destiny's denying there, look, this is not something that, like, I'm getting from, Karl Marx's 18th Brumaire of Louis Napoleon or something. Like, this isn't some like radical weird claim about history. This is a pretty mainstream political science thing, and something that I think we can even observe just in the U.S. case, which is that universal programs that everybody benefits from end up being really popular. They're really hard to touch. Whereas means-tested ones, people don't think they're going to need them. Even if they do, they think that it applies to other people who might not be like them, read black, and that and so it's going to be easier to get a lot more reactionary white people to support scrapping them.
Right. No, I mean, and also, I mean, another smaller scale example of this, and there's been efforts along the way, and even, of course, actually under the Obama administration, there was chained CPI. Which would have been devastating for Social Security. That didn't end up happening either. But the last full-scale effort to privatize, phase out Social Security was an ascendant George W. Bush. Right after his reelection, he defeated John Kerry. By the way, the only modern Republican race going back a couple of decades now where the Republican presidential candidate won both the popular and electoral vote.
Right.
That had not happened since 1988 and has not happened since. He, and people forget this, look, for good reason, because there's Iraq and Katrina and torture and, but those weren't the only things that Ellen DeGeneres' buddy was up to. He was also trying to destroy Social Security. Now, think back to that time of a ascendant reelected George W. Bush, still, I believe, with Republican majorities, certainly in the House, maybe the Senate was 50-50, but I think the Republicans actually had the Senate too. Or if the Democrats had it, it was 51-49. A more conservative Democratic Party.
Oh, by far.
And by far, including people like Joe Lieberman and Max Baucus and Kent Conrad and all of this type of people. They destroyed, in fact, their war against Social Security privatization and the protection of Social Security was actually the first step in both the 2006, the Republicans got their asses kicked. And then in 2008, of course, Barack Obama won an incredible victory and Democrats swept the control of Congress. And defeating Social Security privatization was the first step in that. So, there's just endless examples of this sort of thing.
Oh, yeah. And contrast what happens when they try to screw with Social Security or Medicare for seniors, which is, again, something you don't hear a lot of Republicans saying out loud that they want to get rid of that. But went to stuff that is much more complicated, important segments of which are means tested, et cetera, like Obamacare, which the Republicans spent 2 years during the last 2 years of Obama having like hundreds of symbolic votes to ritually repeal,
Right.
and they didn't have to pay a political cost for that, or again, you look at Canada, you look at the UK, where even the Tories have to pretend to support the NHS, and this seems pretty clear. I would really think that if you want to oppose universal social programs, this wouldn't be the point where I'd recommend making your stand and trying to say, no, that's not true.
Ben Burgis, thank you for the debunk, my friend. Thank you for all you do. Go order, give them an argument. Logic for the left. Ben, thanks a lot.
All right, thanks, Michael.
You just watched a Michael Brooks show video. Subscribe to get them all. Why wouldn't you? Don't be foolish. Click subscribe below and become a patron as well. Patreon.com/TMBS. Thanks, everybody.